Faith Dialogue.
Hello, I'm Richard Thompson, pastor of Central Presbyterian Church, and your host for today's edition of Austin Faith Dialogue. And in this year of 1989, our series wouldn't be complete without bringing the spotlight to bear on the 71st legislature. The senators and representatives were no sooner inducted into office in January than what has been called the fourth branch of government went to work. That is what we call the lobbies. Wherever there's a capital city, you'd expect lobbies to be religiously seeking to influence the lawmakers on the whole host of bills to be voted on by elected officials. But in the midst of all the special interest groups is a religious lobby, one which is distinctive for representing those who would otherwise lack a voice. This group is called Texas Impact. Having been formed by an interfaith community from across the state to speak in behalf of human services, we have here to help identify us with us the director of that, and to show us how interfaith influence is brought to bear in the halls of state government. Lynn Team is director of Texas Impact, and also as our guest today from the legislature we have Representative Jack Vowell from El Paso, and we welcome you both.
Thank you.
And looking forward very much to, with our viewers this morning, to find out why the churches, the religious community, would have a lobby, for heaven's sakes. Lynn?
Well, the churches historically have been concerned with trying to make improvements in society, trying to help the poor, trying to serve poor and hungry, needy, sick, all the different things that the religious community experiences as part of its tradition and its carrying out its commands. But in modern times, you can't just do that by giving a handout to someone or by providing immediate relief to their needs, because our society is too complex for a one-on-one charitable response to be adequate to the large numbers of people in need and the complexity of their needs. So the churches have discovered in recent times the need to be involved in the development of public policy so that the response of the whole society, the whole community, is brought to bear on those problems. And everybody has a role in addressing them.
So it's rising out of the need to go beyond direct ministry to a social ministry that affects policy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. Representative Vowell, have you had contact with Texas Impact, and give us a little bit of a feel that you have it from as a legislature?
I've been working with Texas Impact for the past 8 years, ever since I've been in the legislature, and working very closely with them for the past 6 years, since my job in the legislature relates to the budget for human services and some of the agencies like the Commission for the Deaf and the Blind, the Texas Rehabilitation Commission, and mental health and mental retardation.
So your assignment relates directly to the focus of Impact in terms of its agenda.
That's right. A lot of people cannot understand why I have the assignment, and I can only say that I have it because I asked for it.
I see.
And I found it fascinating, frustrating, very instructive, and extremely satisfying.
And you've been in the legislature since what year?
1981 was when I was first in the legislature.
And Lynn, how long have you been working for Texas Impact?
I came to serve as its director in the fall of '79, which was immediately past that year's session, and my first legislative session was the same as Mr. Vowell's in 1981.
All right. Now, the thing that you said before about what is on the agenda, what are the objectives by the end of the 71st legislature, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see the 71st legislature act with far-sightedness and look at future needs, not just the immediate bottom line of the budget pressures. We have an opportunity in this session to make some adjustments in our revenue system to bring it into the modern times. Some say that the report of the Select Committee on Tax Equity, which gives us a blueprint for how to do that, and yet stops short of recommending that we actually implement that blueprint. Some say that that's not going to be acted on because the physical pressure is not intense enough, like it was in the last session, to really make major changes, and that's probably true. But we are trying to help the legislators look at the unmet needs, the things that the state really needs to be addressing, that it cannot do without additional revenue, and try to see if we can't balance those two.
What are some of those unmet needs?
Well, the spending pressure, downward pressure on spending has been in effect for the last 2, maybe 3 sessions. That means we have not experienced increases in programs that were already way below what a state as wealthy as Texas should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Programs
like aid to families with dependent children, like all kinds of services for families that would enable them to go to work, to become self-supporting, child daycare, family planning, medical care. We do so little to assist needy people to become self-supporting, and yet we don't provide adequate sustenance for them to maintain any kind of quality of life without being able to work to support themselves.
All right, so you're giving some examples of human services that pertain to families, to children, with the elderly. Needs be part of that?
Definitely. Mr. Vallon and I have shared a concern for the low eligibility level for receiving nursing home care. To be eligible for receiving Medicaid coverage for nursing homes, long-term care, people's income has to be so low that we eliminate a lot of people, and the gap between what they have and what it costs to be in a nursing home leaves a lot of people in deep trouble.
All right, Representative Val, do you concur with the goals of impact? And
I think the goals are fine, and I want to emphasize the first thing that Lynn said. I would hope that we would look ahead beyond the next 6 months and try to understand that what we do today is really going to affect the future. The present is the future, and if we do nothing, then we're going to have a future like the present. We cannot address the problems we're going to face unless we begin to plan ahead. And I hope that we will do something in that line.
All right, now she has indicated that this session is different than the last one. I mean, the whole feeling tone seems to be such a change because the last time around, the state was on the verge of a fiscal crisis. The state of Texas credit rating was on the line, and all of that pressure to finally pass a tax increase to keep us solvent it's not there this time. And how do you make your case for the need to meet these needs in human services when the odds of a tax increase seem to be so slim?
Well, I think the case is self-evident. I don't think we have to build up a case for the needs. The needs were there whether we had money or didn't have money. The only thing that we lack in this session is a kind of fervor, a kind of concern that we had in the last session that we had to do something. And today people are heaving a sigh of relief and saying, we got over this, we don't have to worry. Well, the fact is we need to continue to worry about the things we should have been worrying about 5 years ago. Whether or not we have the money is a matter of allocation of resources. And basically what we need to do in this state, and we'll need to continue to do, is to make people aware that it is not wrong to help your neighbor. And in fact, if you don't help him, then you are going to find yourself in deep trouble.
All right, now I'd like to pick up right there because, Lynn, would it be fair to say that you're the head of a do-gooder organization?
Oh, definitely.
You're a shameless do-gooder?
We're shameless do-gooders.
All right, and the thing that occurs to me is that when you make your case for this, if you're doing it just on, you know, the moral, it's the religiously ethical thing to do, does that have the selling power that, say, if you looked at human infrastructure, if you looked at what's happening to people's lives, at the destruction that this eventually costs everybody, do you use that approach so as to make it to our self-interest as well as to our our moral sensitivity?
Yes, we do, and I don't make any apology for that, because I don't think there's any inconsistency between that kind of concept of stewardship, which is you invest, you plan, you prepare for the future, you enable people to grow and fulfill their potential and become participants in the economy and contributors in the economy. Those things are not inconsistent. Compassion and prudence are maybe be separate values, but they're not incompatible, and they're certainly not in contradiction to one another.
All right, well, people seem to respond to the fact that with our physical infrastructure, you have bridges, if they're not taken care of, eventually cost us maybe 10 times more to replace than if we had kept the maintenance on it in the meantime. Can you make a comparison with the human side to this?
Yes, but I would also say before I do that, that the downward pressure on state spending has also created weaknesses in our capital infrastructure. We have delayed maintenance and improvements to state buildings and that sort of thing due to the funding squeeze. But you can always come back and do something about those. One of our colleagues says, if you're building a road, you can go out, you can build the road so far out into the country, and you can stop. And you can come back 2 years or 5 years later and finish the road. But if you don't give prenatal care to a woman who's about to deliver a baby, or if you don't deliver a home-delivered meal to an elderly person who has no other source of nutrition, you can't come back later and finish the job. A child whose developmental needs are not met, you can't correct the damage that's done. So the human stuff can't wait in the same way that perhaps the material things can.
All right. Representative Vowell, do you feel that that there's been a change in the state legislature since you've been in it in regard to an awareness of that prudential factor? Or are people more open to funding this now than they were when you first came?
Well, I think they definitely are. What we've been able to do in the last 3 sessions, even in a time of great financial difficulty, has been nothing short of miraculous, and I think it's reflective of a real understanding and a real concern. For example, 2 sessions ago, we did the unheard of thing and sent Mrs. Team and her colleagues into a tailspin. We adopted the Human Services budget unanimously without any dissent and without any floor fight, and added about $200 million to the budget when we were supposed to cut $200 million. In the last session of the legislature, we made significant changes and increases. Our problem in this session financially is that we have a welfare reform program which has really not been fully determined as yet, and we don't know what it would cost. Plus we have a lot of enhancements which we've previously begun, and we need to continue financing them. And people assume that if you spent $10 last year, that you can spend $10 next year. But if you spent $10 last year on groceries and go and buy those same groceries today, you find that they cost a little bit more. And next year, those groceries are going to cost a little bit more. And the same is true of medical care, it's true of prenatal care, it's true of all social service programs. Plus, we have an increasing population in this state. 20% of our population is growing rapidly, and therefore we have more people to take care of. So it's not only the increase in the rate of cost, but there's an increase in the actual numbers of people we need to serve.
So that creates a continuing pressure of building up of the needs that would make just holding the line less tenable.
That's right.
And could you give us some examples of how you have perceived Texas Impact making a difference, to have a religious lobby of this kind? What would not have happened if they hadn't been on the scene?
Well, the great thing about Texas Impact is that it's a coalition of a lot of different religious groups. It's ecumenical, it's non-denominational, and it's statewide. And therefore, when their representatives come and talk to us, They're not talking about a specific, particular little neighborhood. We know, or at least I know, that when Lynn talks to me, she's talking about a concern which most Texans have. And I can say most Texans because I found that most Texans do agree with the goals of Texas Impact. You know, I use prudential arguments too. I say if we spend $1 here, we'll save $10 here. But I also know that most legislators have religious affiliations. And I'm not ashamed at all in saying, why don't you have people from his church call him and say, we really want this to be done. You see, lobbying is a two-way street. I lobby all the time. I lobby Lynn, I lobby other legislators. Lobbying is simply expressing your opinion and your desire about what you think government ought to be.
All right. Now, the image, though, that people have of lobbying is a pressure group that will bring to bear a kind of a tactical forcing of the issue. And are you not into power politics, Lynn, with Texas Impact?
Well, it's appropriate for us to be modest about our political power because we don't attempt to organize political power. The organizations that sponsor my work are the geographic sets of Methodist conferences, Presbyterian presbyteries, dioceses, and ecumenical groups. And I represent their concerns in the legislature on behalf of people who need them to be there for their sake. But we don't pretend that that is a power block of some sort. And we work on a persuasion mode, education, analysis, giving good, for instance, explanations of what's at stake in the budget figures in terms of people, and trying to help legislators understand what that means in their home community using the networks that we have, helping them. Mr. Vowell works on these issues all of the time because that's his committee assignment, and he's become the resident expert on all of these programs. But other members of the legislature who are working in other committee assignments don't have the time to analyze and go into all of this stuff. A certain number of them will vote for it just because Mr. Vowell says, because he is an influential member.
They trust his judgment.
Yes, they trust his, and they know he's a good, solid conservative man with good values and good sense, and he's not going to do anything, ask them to do anything stupid, and so they believe what he says.
Well, let's put Impact into a context that you're not the only religious lobby.
That's right.
Over there on the Hill. That what are some of the others that you could name?
Our colleague groups, if you will, are the Texas Catholic Conference, which has a lobby staff which has been there for, I don't know, 20 years, maybe longer. Way before my time, anyway. And the Baptist, Southern Baptists have the Christian Life Commission. They have a staff of lobbyists who have been there for 20 years or so. All of us, sometimes working on the same agenda, overlapping, but each working on our own interests as well.
And then you network with groups like People First. I've heard of this. Could you just expand on that a bit?
People First is a sort of broad-based campaign that has been active in the last session and this session of the legislature, bringing together not just religious groups, but a wide range of providers of services and representing consumers of services, groups like the Gray Panthers and the Texas Medical Association, the Texas Hospital Association, disability groups, all kinds of people.
It goes beyond the religious community.
Right, way beyond the religious community. Everybody who has an interest in health and human services has been welcome to participate in that campaign, and we've had a lot of cooperation from disparate groups.
Well, in mentioning some of these other groups, it brings to mind, Representative Val, that I think another public perception is that lobbies that are connected to the churches or religious associations of some sort tend to get fixed on certain issues. In Texas, I would suspect that matters of the lottery and horse racing and those kinds of things are, in the public's perception, that's a religious matter. And so you might expect pressure of that sort to be brought to bear the Senate and the House. But you have experienced the religious community in regard to those kinds of matters too, I presume.
That's right, and those issues, the matter of religion, of doctrinal concepts, plays a much more significant role than it does in what Texas Impact does, because Texas Impact talks about human needs and talks about what we would call Christian, Judeo-Christian values, which are a foundation of our society and what decent, honest people have been talking about for several millennia. They're not concerned primarily with a particular doctrine, a particular tenet, unless you, I guess you could express it by saying what they're asking us to do basically is what Jesus told people to do on the Sermon on the Mount, to care for others, to realize that we all have a common goal, a common linkage with one another, and that any weakness in that link, any weak link in the chain hurts us all.
All right. So have you seen Impact as being helpful from the standpoint of not being narrowly focused on single issue politics?
To me, it's very important because I feel that a legislator has to do a lot of things, and if you just judge him on one action, then you're missing the whole point. And if that's all you concentrate on, you tend to be less effective in terms of having influence. You see, one of the great things that people don't understand about lobbyists, and I really didn't understand it until I became a legislator, was that we use them as a connection. If I want to get information about certain issues, since I have worked with Lynn and know that she provides me with good, accurate information, I may call her and say, tell me what you know about this particular problem. And then I can use her data.
Yes.
And oftentimes that's quicker. It may be more reliable than some other data that I could get from a more official source.
And you know that because of this experience with this organization, there's not an axe to grind, and that you can trust that data.
That's right.
Okay.
And I also know that whatever I do is going to be judged in light of the circumstances, and that what I do will be respected. It may not be agreed with, but they will understand that I've made the decision, and so far they have never come to me and threatened me. And I think this is what people think about pressure groups. They think that legislators are bought, that congressmen are bought, that they're threatened, and therefore they're controlled. Well, I can tell you that in my experience, no one has ever tried those tactics. If they did, they would be in big trouble with me. And so I can't speak for anyone else. I can just simply say everybody that has worked with me has been reasonable, helpful, and we've gotten along beautifully.
All right. Well, let's go back just quickly because our time is limited here. I know in your goals, just visualize for us a moment when the best that could happen.
Well, our overall goal is a nice generic statement that says we work to direct the state's resources to meet human needs. And that is a stewardship kind of statement. The stewardship of our state's resources is very important. How we gather the money in a fair and equitable way in terms of our revenue system, and how we allocate the money in our budget to do the best thing for people in our state.
All right. Now, the matter of revenue, if the tax remains the same, if there's no further revenue, Representative Vowell, what's the consequence of that?
Well, if the revenue remains the same and we do not reallocate our funds and reprioritize them, then Human Services is going to have less than we would like for it to have. But I think you need to understand it will have more than it has today, we will just not be able to carry on certain programs that we would like to carry on, and we may, because of some factors, eliminate or cut down on some programs. I'm very hopeful that by the time the gavel falls, we won't have that problem.
Okay. And very quickly, Lynn, do you share that hope?
Yes. I'm not cynical. If the day comes when I give up and I don't have hope, I will do some other kind of work. But I continue to be optimistic and to see a good reason for optimism in the leadership of people like Mr. Vowell.
All right. Well, I'd like to express the positive feeling that I think is going to come through your remarks here today, that you're affirming the best, not only in regard to what you're hoping will happen, but in those who are making these decisions. And as we bring our discussion to a close, I want to express appreciation to Lynn Teague, Director of Texas Impact, and to Representative Jack Vowell. And as they reflect upon the concerns of the religious community, may the statement of goals, which we have been discussing, be an end toward that which is a stimulus to us all in our moral sensitivities. On behalf of the Austin Metropolitan Ministries, I'm Richard Thompson. Thank you for joining us and inviting you to be with us next week at the same time.
For more information about today's topic, call the Austin Area Conference of Churches at 472